I always show up in these spaces just to let you know that it's okay to appreciate the things that you have. It's okay to appreciate who you are. And so, what you have within you, if that is courage, as I'm discovering about myself, as it is from the depiction of the Wiz and the Wizard of Oz, that all of the person's characters were looking for something, that they actually had to go and find something on the outside of them as they were on this journey of rediscovering who they are, that they had discovered that they already had it. And so that's the message for the day as I just finished my Zestful Living with Sweet Tea morning show that I do each and every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so one of the things that I do in that space is that I have some questions that I do as a hot topic segment. And I thought maybe I would come here on the live here and so that we can have some questions brought that we can discuss and talk about in terms of what it may look like for us. And so for many of us that are pouring into other people and neglecting to pour into ourselves, do we ever get time to think about what we need? And as the question says, when did you finally realize that forgiveness was for you, not them? And so that's something that comes about when you're perhaps holding on to some resentment, bitterness, as I always share, to go ahead and release those kinds of things, to release the bitterness, the resentment, the hatefulness, the unforgiveness, all of the strongholds that have a grip on your life. And we know that the strongholds are negative experiences that causes unhealthy memories. And so that's what the stronghold is and what it does. And so when did you finally realize that forgiveness was for you and not them? And so maybe it's something that you're holding on to that you need to let go of. Don't do it. Don't hold on to something that doesn't belong to you, because it's not going to make you feel good to feel as if you're not going to forgive that person. And so all of that is going to rot inside of your gut and inside of the inside of you that makes you feel bad. It's not making them feel any way. It's making you feel bad for holding on to unforgiveness. And as I have pointed out, that I have forgiven someone, and actually I forgive myself for forgiving someone that has done the unforgivable, unaliving my father. And so I have forgiven myself for forgiving his brother that unalived my father, because it's not for me to carry. It's hurtful to know that someone would even do that to their own family, and that would take away someone that we loved without any thought of how it would make us feel. And it's a crying shame that this happens, or it happened. But yet I can remember who my father is at his core: a meek, kind man, a strong man, someone that feared God and loved God and knew the Creator, the Almighty. He walked with him. He used to talk about being in the valley in terms of how he lived his life, in terms of walking in the space and life that he had as a stand-up man. Whatever life brought to him, he faced it, he lived it, he did it. And I'm very proud to know that I have my father in my life as a part of who I am that defines me. And he told me that you were born to die. And so that's something that we all have to do in terms of transitioning. And die doesn't mean forever, as energy lives forever. Energy lives on, as we are souls that have an energy. And when you take your last breath, in many cases, you continue on to the next realm. You continue on to the next endeavor. As many of us don't really know what all of that means, the gravity of all of it. We just miss the person that is no longer physically in our lives. But as you remember them, as I recall, it says to do this in remembrance of me. Now, whether many people don't believe in whatever name you want to call a thing, and they're saying all of these things about Jesus, but for many people that believe in something that was brought to them for whatever reason, you can make something out of something that other people feel ain't nothing. And so even if they came in on a ship called Jesus, even if the J was not around at the time that the name came about, whatever it is that you have to gravitate towards that's going to make you feel powerful, that's going to make you feel loved, you hold on to the thing that makes you feel worth living, that makes you feel good about yourself and your life. Because many people have their ideas and beliefs, and that's something that I don't get into. I don't get into what someone's belief system is when it comes to their religious belief, their affiliation, whether that's Catholic, Methodic, Baptist, whatever the case, the denomination. I don't get involved in that, and whatever affiliation in terms of politics, because all of this brings about disruption, calamity, arguments, debates over what someone believes in. That's your prerogative. Believe in whoever you want to believe in, or whatever the case. That's your prerogative. As my dear father says, that you were born to die, and he walked in this life and in this way, that he carried himself as a dignified man. And that's what I remember about him. So when you start remembering your family, you remember who they are, and that way you can hold on to that. As my father would always refer to himself within the way of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, thy comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's Psalm 23, the King James Version. And I do know that I spoke these words for my father, as it says, Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Because he always talked about being in this valley. And so that's something that came over to me in terms of this question. When did you finally realize that forgiveness was for you, not them? Every day. I can think about, what does it mean to me to hold on to some resentment and bitterness? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't give me anything. And whatever you may feel in terms of judgment, if someone unalives someone that you loved, it's not for me to hold on to any resentment from that. Whatever it is that they have to face, their soul has to face that. And I guarantee you, my grandparents did not appreciate his brother taking his life, because that's their child. My grandfather loved his father, because my father lived in California, and every time we would visit my grandfather, I used to say granddaddy, and we would go over to his house, because my mother's family lived on 5th Street and my father's family lived on 6th Street in the same neighborhood in East Thomas in Birmingham, Alabama. And so we would visit both sets of family, but my grandfather would always talk about my father, his son, being in California. He was very proud of his son being in California. My father would tell you to this day that he was a bookie there in California. He had a few bookie joints that he maintained, and he was good with numbers, very good with numbers. And so for someone to not be ashamed of who they are, that's what you stand on. He's a bookie, a gambler. And so what is a gambler? Is someone that will take a chance. Is someone that will bet on themselves about life, about who they are, because you have to take a chance. We're all gamblers, in a sense, because we're all out here taking chances that would not exist if you didn't take the risk of whatever that may look like for you. I'm taking a risk by showing up here on the live as my authentic self, in some sense of it, that whether it inspires you, encourages you, gives you a different view about a thing, because we all have platforms that we do here on these social media streets. and I'm recognizing something about all of us, is that that opportunity that you're looking for is already invested in you. Someone way back when, before you were even thought of, was betting on you, that you would show up and that you would do the thing that you have always have wanted to do. And whatever that looks like, my father, he would tell me, this is your father. Said, I have a voice in the crowd, and here I am. Whatever all of this means, I hope this is something that is giving you some inspiration, as it is some insight in terms of how we all strive to be our very best in life. As I was just sharing on my Zest for Living Sweet Tea Morning Show, how Sophia was broken down in the color purple, that she was someone that stood bold and strong and spoke her mind and was fierce because she did not bow down to anyone. And when the worker wanted to ask her, would you be my maid? She turned around and said, hell no. And so she asked again, she said, what did you say? And out of all of the mob that came around, and she began to say, get my children out of here, get my children out of here. And she balled up her fist. She says, I said, hell no. And they knocked her down and hit her, and screamed at her and knocked her down in her face, hit her. And so at that very moment, something happened within her. She had to be beat down into submission. And we know some people that will do that to you. They try to defame your character. They'll try to make it seem as if you are a bad person, but you know within yourself, the convictions that you have for yourself, that you're more than what they can see. And she stood on that. Hell no. She did not want to be her maid. Are you kidding me? And the only way that she was being her maid, they had to beat it out of her to be submissive. And so I was sharing at one particular time when Celie came around at a convenience store that they were at, and Celie, or Sophia, was told to shop. And she couldn't see because they had beaten her and closed her eyes, one of her eyes shut. And so for Celie to see her in that place and in that space, someone that's been courageous and bold and speaking up, to be broken down as she was, she took the lead and took the sack and the list that she had and filled the sack up to make sure that she had all of the items that she came into the store to have. And so she was a friend for her. And so many of us could use a good friend in our lives in some cases if you allow them to be in your life. But at no point in time should you ever be beaten down into submission to change who you are at your core. And the only way that they were able to do that is that they did something to her and forced her to be that way, submissive. Something that went against who she was. She didn't want to be anyone else's maid. She has her own children to take care of. And we know for many of our ancestors that went through that horrific holocaust of the enslavement, many people say it didn't exist. Whatever it is you want to feel, we know the oral traditions that come about that explain to us in many cases some of these incidences, as the birds are singing here. And so it was something that had to be beat out of her to make her do something that she didn't want to do. And the particular scene that I'm getting to is at the dinner table when Sophia was brought around the entire table of the meal that they were partaking in, and Celie was there, and something came over her as she remembered, because she was beaten completely down. When she heard Celie being strong, it helped her to revive herself because it ignited something within her that was missing from being beaten down in submission. So when we recognize a thing about someone else that can bring us back to who we really are, that remembrance comes back to us. Well, wow, I'm courageous. Wow, I have a voice in the crowd. Wow, thank you for instilling this in me and helping me to remember who I am. And at that dinner table, it was something that happened in the scene that I understand Oprah Winfrey said that it was told to her to embody it and to come up with it. And it was her own words in terms of what she got out of that character, Sophia. I remember that day I seen you. I was feeling real bad. I was feeling real bad. I remember that day I seen you, but I knew there was a God. I knew there was a God, that she knew something that was in Celie helped her to stand up as Celie pointed for her to lift her chin up and know that better days were on the horizon. And in some cases, we all need that extra spark in our lives. It's going to remind us of who we are. And once again, we can have the courage and the strength can come back to us as we can remember. And it only takes someone to remind us in many cases of who we are. And so, yes, do this in remembrance of me as you partake in some of the things that are ceremonial. I believe the what is it called? Communion that you partake in as you drink the wine and you eat of the bread. And so that's something that they do as a ceremonial part in the church, Church of God in Christ. Communion. And so some of the things that you do in terms of remember who our people are. As I'm remembering my father as a meek man, a strong man, a man that walked with integrity, someone that did the thing as he wanted to and lived and didn't take anything from anyone. He stood in his own principle of who he was. He didn't ask anyone for anything, but if he wanted something, he would always pay him. And he kept his word. That's one thing you can guarantee. If my father says he's going to do something, he does it. And that's who he is. Mr. Walter Boyce Millhouse is my father. And so that's what he did each and every day of his life. He lived as a strong man, as a man with conviction, a fierce man. And so he comes to me today as I remember him. Absolutely. And I have a dad that I call my dad, my brother's father. But I grew up in California. And so after my mother and father separated, my dad, my brother's father, was in our lives before my brother was born. It was about 7. My sister was 9. And so he is in my life to today. And so we talk every day. And it's something about how someone can come into your life and be a part of your life that had a help in the foundation of your life. And so we always recognize those in our lives that support us, those in our lives that remember when you were just a little girl. I had no idea some of the things perhaps my biological father saw me do, making up my bed, and had some issues with that he would bring up. Taught me a great deal of things. And so you can remember who people are. Give them their respect and their honor. As he says, this is your father. To let me know there is no other man that can be your father, as I understand that. And of course, I recognize that. I also recognize my brother's father, who is there every day in my life to support me on my Zestful Living with Sweet Tea Morning Show. And it's okay to recognize someone that means something to you, as he was a part of our lives growing up. And my mother was involved with him as her significant other at the time. And so as my brother came into the world, we were a family. And so that's the part that I can remember about Dad, that he comes on the live with me in this respect. And so respect is given in terms of the things that people earn. It's not necessarily given, but it's earned. And so you can recognize people in your life and make certain that you give them their flowers. And so this is something that we do on a day-to-day basis. Maybe we'll answer one more of these questions and see what we can talk about. I just really want you to grasp believing in yourself and trusting in the space that you're in when it comes to your journey, your own journey. As I was listening to Nia Long in the interview that Kiki Palmer was doing with her, Nia Long has come a long way in terms of her career and the grace, and I will know that she's going to do a great job playing the graceful Mrs. Catherine Jackson in Michael. I'm looking forward to seeing it because, again, Nia Long, I believe she takes on roles that gives her that space, and she's very dignified and a classy lady that I can respect her work, some of the things that she's done, and has been leaving a legacy of great work. and the things that she does as an actress. And so that was some of the things that she brought up in the interview in terms of being in that space with John Singleton as they came into the neighborhood there in South Central Los Angeles. I am from LA. I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised. And so some of the things that she brought up was the depiction of the characters that he had created in some of those movies that he made. Love Jones was one of them that she was in, and a great deal of movies, as you can recall, some of her work. And so she was remembering who was John Singleton because she hasn't ever heard of anyone black being John Singleton. So when they met, they actually clicked and worked together, and she has the memories of some of the work that she did. Boys in the Hood, I believe it was. Some great work, true to life characters. And so one of the questions that comes up here is how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities? As this is something that I just pulled from the questions as the topic of Nia Long was coming up. Some of the areas that she talked about was actually happening in the movie. It is a black and white nostalgia movie, Boys in the Hood, and all of these ways that it was actually happening in real life, at some of the things that were going on in some of John Singleton's work. And so it was detailing some of the traumas that went on a day-to-day basis, you know, the gangs and the gang culture, and some of the things that many families had to work to stay together. Many families, as we had a milkman deliver our food there in Los Angeles, California, milk products and eggs and things of that nature, that it was being delivered as families were finding out how to live through some of the struggles that were going on. The welfare system was around, and of course they had the government block cheese that many of us remember having. And so how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities, as I just talked about, how my dear beloved father was unalived by his brother. And so how do you break those kind of traumas and cycles as to not accept it as a part of who you are, to not identify it as a part of your life? This was an isolated incident that someone took it upon themselves to do something heinous, horrific, that would leave this kind of trauma within us. And this goes into the strongholds. Those negative experiences can produce unhealthy memories, which are called the strongholds. And so to be able to recognize that, as it says, the affected person may not recognize the connection between the present ill effects and the unhealthy memories of a specific traumatic event suffered. Often this is expressed in experiences of sexual trauma, abandonment, trauma, and growing up with fear. Strongholds control what and who the individual is attracted to. These also control how the individual views and interacts with his or her world. If it was your innocence, self-esteem, time, money, love, or anything else stolen, it is time to take it back. You are the one who can take responsibility for your health and happiness. And so this is what this is. It's being able to recognize what this is, how this comes about when it comes to those traumas. And so we can experience that in terms of some of the things that has affected us in our lives. It could be biological. It could be something that is innate, some of the things that we inherit, the traumas resurface as it is post-traumatic slave syndrome, some of the things that has happened in the past that it carries on. And so how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities? We can understand where it derives from, and we can stop it in its track when we see and feel that it's surfacing within our bodies. We can eliminate it from continuing on by recognizing that it stops here. We're not going to allow any of this to continue in our family, in our lineage, because we're going to explain to ourselves that what is happening right now in real time at this moment, that you feel safe, that you feel secure, and that you feel whole. There's nothing happening traumatic. It's just those negative experiences are bringing up unhealthy memories. So we'll replace those negative experiences from being unhealthy memories by replacing them with something that is happening right now in real time. So we won't make those experiences suffer here in real time, make us suffer here in real time. We'll dispel them, and we'll send them all the way back to the bottomless pits of hell where they belong. You do not belong in my life. This is not where I'm at right now. I'm in a place of peace, and I'll remain in this place of peace for the rest of my life. Because this gives me comfort to think about something traumatic as it's happening all around. I believe that the 8 children that just lost their lives at the hands of their own father, all of the traumas that's happening all around us, how much do we allow it to seep into our loins, in our bodies, in our minds? It does something to you. It desensitizes you from hearing all of that. So when I say protect your ear gates, the things that you hear, you may adhere to them. The things that you listen to. As I'm hearing these birds out here chirping, that sounds better to me than hearing a bunch of bad news, as it says in The Wizard of Oz. Don't nobody bring me no bad news, no bad news, no bad news. Don't nobody bring me no bad news. And that was the Wicked Witch of the West, and she is making a case of whatever it is that you hear, the shock of it all. It can traumatize you, as we here in my family have heard a great bit of things that has traumatized us from the shock of someone in our lives ending. So how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities? We can bring up happy memories. We can bring up those that were no longer here, some of the things that they did that made us laugh, that put a smile on our face, how they walked in this life. As my dear dad says, you were born to die. So we all got to go that way. So how are you living now? What are you doing now that makes you feel good? And when you start to feel good, you make other people around you feel good. So we can start bringing up good things, good vibes, and have a good attitude. That can break a cycle of trauma and hurt. As it says, hurt people hurt people. Well, what are you hurting about? What is it that you have not spoken on, that you're holding on to? The resentment and the bitterness and the hatefulness and the unforgiveness. We can break that cycle and start to reconcile for a while. Start to remember a time where we all used to have fun, because I remember those days. So the best thing that I can do, me, myself, personally, as my brother would say, is to continue to focus on me, to continue to do the things that make me feel good, because there's no sense of pouring from an empty cup, to continue to want to save everyone else from themselves, that they have to recognize what it is that they're doing to other people. And so we're not responsible for the actions of other people. As many of us as mothers and wives and businesswomen are constantly pouring into other people, constantly wanting to show up for other people and to show them what it's like to have integrity and morals and values. They have to learn for themselves. How to be a good person. They have to learn for themselves. As it was depicted in The Color Purple, Sophia learned something about herself that had to make her humble herself, not so much to be beat down to be humble, but to know that she can lean on someone else, as she did with Celia. She couldn't see when Celia had to take the shopping list from her and fill her grocery bag up. There could be something about you that's pretty stubborn, that no one else can do anything for you because you're used to doing it all yourself. I'm talking about those like a sister, A mother, someone that's constantly pouring into other people, as mothers do. But you're neglecting who you are, as you're more than just your roles. And as I have suggested for you all to look at the 5 signs that you've lost yourself in your roles and how to reclaim you. It's available on my Stand store that you can take a look at. It's free. And so with that, that role becomes an enormous responsibility that many of us take on. But it's something that we have to let ourselves to live again and be free from, just for a little while. And so the question, how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities? And those cycles are coming back around because no one has addressed it to stop it in its track. To say, we're not having this. This is not who we are. Wherever this has come from you in the depths of your loins to take someone's life, that is a problem that you have to face at the end of the day. It does not define who we are as a people when someone does something so heinous and horrific that causes everyone else to feel the pain. But the one that needs to feel the pain is the one that did the act. And so how can we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and our communities? Recognize that it's happening and say no more. We're not having it. We're going to create happy memories again. We're going to create good experience again, positive experiences that can bring healthy memories. As we know, the strongholds are just the opposite. Those are negative experiences that causes unhealthy memories. So when I say do this in remembrance of me, what is it about your family that is no longer here that you can think of that they did? As my brother, Solo Dolo, he strived to be his own man and is a good father. So think about those in our family that have transitioned and think about something good about them so that that memory of them could live on, because energy lives on. As all of us have to go that route, my father would tell me, you were born to die. So before you do, and I says, I understand that, Dad, but I'm not trying to do that today. Before you do something that brings you some joy so that people can remember who you are in a good way. And so I hope that this has brought you some clarification, perhaps something that you're dealing with that you're putting aside. Perhaps it's something that you haven't forgiven someone about. Forgive yourself first so that you can live on and move on and be good, so that you can provide something for your family and your community, and so that you can leave a legacy for you and your family. As I stood there in Madam C.J. Walker's museum, and I was there in a sacred space that we were releasing some things about us, as I shared this once before. And so at that time, because it was a museum, to recognize the effort that she made to stand on grounds that has not ever been broken before. She's standing on a space that she created as the first. And so for many of the things that I'm doing, it's the first. And so as it is, first generation student there at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And so I'm accustomed to doing things that has not ever been done before. And I can find the courage within me to continue on this journey, that I'm taking on something now and putting it in my hands as it has been given to me, as I have seen those that come before me do an excellent job. No one could beat you at being your best when you show up being you, because you have not ever been seen before. They only made one when they made you, the good maker, the creator, the almighty, whatever people want to call him these days. If you believe in it or not, how do you think you got here? Okay, and you're not here by accident. It's not a mistake. It's only a mistake if you feel as if you're failing, if you feel as if you've turned around the wrong way. Make your adjustments. That's how we can break the cycles. We can make adjustments. That's how we can break the cycles of trauma. Don't bring it up again. Dispel it. Have a vivid imagination and create something pleasant as it is. I could see peace instead of this, as my dear beloved teacher, Reverend Dr. Ayanna Von Zant, says, that I can see peace instead of this. whatever that might be. Whatever it is that we can call a thing, we can recognize what that thing is as trauma, but we don't have to live in it. We can recognize that thing that needs to be able to heal us from hurt, but we don't have to live in it. We can recognize what it is, but within we can create something else that will dispel it, that will break it down into its minute way of being nothing. You don't have to make it bigger than what it is, because then that gives it life. We can dispel it so that we can live in a healthier energy, that we can begin to be the person that we know we should be for the betterment of all that are involved, ourselves, our family, community, and society as a whole. You can make something better, even if it's something that no one else will do. And so we're required to make things better, because the next generation has to come along and live in a planet that, however, it's going to be left for them to live in it. What are you doing now that's going to create something better for your family? And so we can begin to start doing things that we know we need to do. There's work to be done, and I enjoy it. I love it here, as I say to my dear beloved business coach, Dahl Avant. I love it here. I love it here in a place of peace. I love it here in a place of recognizing my worth. I love it here as a high value entrepreneur. I love it here as someone that's learning to be okay with me, that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's where I'm at. I'm watching the birds. I feed them, and they are nibbling at my breadcrumbs that I left for them, and so some of the things that I feed them. And so when you're feeding nature and giving back in whatever way that you give, it will come back to you in ways that you could not ever imagine. And you don't do it for the sake of wanting something back. You do it because it's coming out of your heart. As I say, it used to be said in some of the church, and I don't hear it anymore: bless those that want to give, that just does not have it. And so if we become so greedy now that all you want to know is where's your tithes and offerings, lock the doors. Don't let anybody else out of here until they give. And so that's not something that we are as a people strive to be. You don't have to force anyone to do anything. Do it because you want to do it. And I'm here to remind you, sis, that when you are pouring into everyone else, you have been carrying the load around for everyone else, that you forgot that you have one too. You pour into your children, your career, and your husband, your spouse, significant other, partner, boo thing in your person. And every time you try to do something for yourself, there it is, that guilt. It shows up every time. And I'm here to let you know that that guilt is a lie. You can find me on the Zest for Living with Sweet Tea Morning Show each and every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I go live on TikTok and Facebook. I have a Zest for Life social club and support group. We have 3 meetups coming up, and stay tuned for that, where real women and real conversations happen. And we're doing what's necessary to bring us back home to ourselves as we rediscover who we are once again. You were a woman before you became a mother. You were a woman before you became a wife. And who are you now during this re-nesting time in your life? You have no idea. You lost your identity. And I'm here to help you to rediscover what that is. The Lady Academy Workshop. We do a great deal of work, healing work, where it's time for us to find our way back home to ourselves, as we begin to uncover this notion of how do we work to break cycles of trauma and hurt in our families and communities. It starts with us. It starts with us recognizing who we are as a person. It starts with us for knowing that our value and our worth comes from us as we find our way back home to ourselves, as I'm doing here in real time. Our lives have always have mattered. And so we can begin to do the work that's required, as I'm learning and hearing from some of the ladies that were in the Lady Academy workshop, that it's a great place to be, that we have real conversations about healing, about trusting again. The sisterhood that we have in the support group, that we're doing everything possible to make it known that we can get along with each other. We can support one another. That's what it's all about. And so I just want you to know that you were not put on this earth to pour endlessly into everyone else on an empty cup. And I see you, sis, and I recognize what you're going through. So hopefully you can find a message in this and that it can provide you with the next step, a guide and light, that you can live through the life that you want. And if I am a reflection of you, then I am a reflection saying that everything is okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Everything is all right. As my mother would say, it'll all work out. And you can trust and believe that. Have a good day on purpose and give yourself some grace today.